Welcome to Calls and Careers, shaping new mindsets for an evolving workforce, a limited conversation series with Active Minds and the Hartford. The Hartford is a leader in property and casualty insurance, employee benefits, and mutual funds. With a shared focus on prevention and action, the Hartford and Active Minds are partnering to provide mental health support to young adults and mobilize the next generation of mental health advocates. Today, we have Sophia Shieh, an Active Minds Alumni board member. We'll be discussing work-life balance. But before we jump into today's conversation, Sophia, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Well, thank you for having me. Super happy to be here. I'm Sophia. I'm currently a doctoral student in clinical psychology at Duquesne University in Pittsburgh. I work at the community mental health clinic that's affiliated with our department. I also do some research and work as teaching assistant in my program. I've been part of Active Minds for a little over 6 years, starting from my freshman year of college, and I had the privilege of serving previously on the National Student Advisory Committee and currently on the board, alumni board. I'm really glad to be here with you all.
Thanks, Sophia. We're so excited to have this conversation, and I can't think of a better person to be having this conversation with. So let's go ahead and get started. In today's world, we carry a heavy load from managing personal and work responsibilities, along with having a personal life and aspirations. At times, it can be overwhelming to find a balance between them all. We're excited to discuss the methods we use to find balance or integration. We'll extend today's conversation with a famous quote by Audre Lorde: "Caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it's self-preservation, and an act of political welfare." So, to kick us off, Sophia, do you believe there is a balance between work and life?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a goal that we will strive to have, right? I really appreciate the quote that we shared with everyone. Sometimes that without self-care or trying to have work-life balance, it's self-indulgence, it's not working hard enough. But that mindset always often gets in our way of trying to find that balance between work and life. So I do think work-life balance is possible, and it requires probably the effort of individual and also, community, workforce, and institutions. It requires both individual and collective effort. And I think in the field of mental health, especially for us who were very committed to serve the population that we cared about, sometimes we do so at the cost of our own wellness and own well-being. But I learned the hard way, but also through mentorship, that it's not sustainable if you're burning yourself out, if you're sacrificing your personal time, if you're not allowing yourself the opportunity to bounce back, right? Then you're not modeling good ways of living for people you serve. And it also take away your capacity to sustain in the work that you likely enjoy doing. So on the other hand, how do we find that balance between work and life? It's the question that I hear you asking. And I think, as mentioned, finding that core value of doing what you're passionate about, what is meaningful for you, could be a very important first step. And finding a community who value you, who value your work, who also strive to provide a space for collective healing, for collective care, right? A lot of times we talk about self-care, but there's also this idea of collective care that could really help you bounce back, and that could really help you sustain the work that you're passionate about. I think if we're able to head on this path, it is possible to find that balance between work and life.
Can you tell us a little bit about like what are the ways that you had to learn this lesson and like how? And then also tell us a little bit more about like what is collective care, so that others can be able to identify, do they do this practice or how to incorporate it into their lives?
Yeah, those are really good questions. How did I find it? um, I think a good example was that there was a time that I was working 40 hours in inpatient mental health unit while I was an undergraduate student. Um, so it sounds like you're kind of trying to add a full time studying caseload on top of a full time job. I did so because I was really passionate about the clientele that I was serving. Um, and along that journey, a lot of mentors, supervisors started to remind me that, well, you don't have to take on every shift. You don't have to, you know, take on every responsibility that people try to put on your plate. You have to learn to draw your boundaries. And I started seeing that when employees work too many shifts in a row, when they neglect to take time off for themselves, it does take a toll on your own well being and mental health. I start to notice that on myself, that I start to cut off my social time with peers, that I start to um, not enjoy my daily routine as much as I used to. I start to question, is this the field that I want to enter? Um, Right. And I also start to notice that when we don't take the time to self reflect and care for ourselves, a lot of time that stress can cause things like compassionate fatigue. Um, and when you work with, for example, highly traumatized population, that could cause things like secondary traumatic stress. Um, and in that ideal scenario, it could unintentionally actually put the burden onto the clientele that you're serving or take away your capacity to best be there with them. So it really is through mentorship, through supervision, through a lot of peer support. I have to relearn that idea of setting boundaries, of believing that rest is part of your work as well. Um, and it's also through really good mentors who model things like not emailing people, right? Sometimes it does require a top-down approach, not emailing people after work. Actually texting me about it's a good day, go out and have a walk. Um, so I was fortunate enough to have that kind of supervisor. Um, but I think these are good examples of how workforce or the community can step in and support individuals in terms of finding their work-life balance. Um, and other examples of collective care, right? It could be finding colleagues who share the same value as you do, who advocate for the same cause as you do, who acknowledge the same barriers and challenges in workforce as you do. Um, and I really think that having people who validate your experience, who acknowledge systemic barriers together, and who empower you to uplift your voice with you, um, that really um, that really can bring about some deep healing. And also, in my case, it helps me restore the belief in this field, and it helps me try to kind of figure out why I chose to enter this field to begin with. So it did take a journey, and I don't think any of us are perfect, right? It could be sometimes we do it better, sometimes not as much, but we're all on this journey together. It's I think what I learned as well.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for sharing that. You and I have had the conversation about sometimes you don't have to do it all, right? And like how, no, it's okay. It's the sentence. I love that you said that you don't have to take every opportunity to show that you still are passionate and care about the work that it is that you are doing. So, what role does work-life balance play when maintaining a healthy mental health in a workplace? You kind of talked about it a little bit with the supervisor who told you like it's a good day to go take a walk. Tell us about some more of those things that's happened in your experience with that.
Yeah, definitely. I think we talk about how the collective can support individuals in maintaining work-life balance, right? And I think what reversely, when we have many individuals who feel like they are well taken care of, and they can um, strive for that balance for themselves, then we also make the workforce more um, compassionate. We make the workforce more enjoyable to the best possible. We make our collective space, more supportive, right? So I think it's a mutual relationship in that regard, if that makes any sense to you. Um, and sometimes I like to rephrase work-life balance as more of a work-life sustainability. Um, right. So if individuals are able to um, kind of achieve the range of balance, it's likely that we have better employee retention, right? It is likely that um, we have better peer support, peer supervision. It is likely that we're able to achieve the goals together. I It's also, there's argument, if we're able to reach work-life balance, that employees are more productive. Right? And I think that's a really good mindset, but also I don't want to overemphasize on productivity as the only goal of a workforce, right? There is also meaning, there's also value in what we choose to do. But the other thing that I want to touch upon is that sometimes people give up on work-life balance because we grow up under that mentality that helps us survive. So there might be some survival strategies in that, and I really respect that wisdom. I think being able to accept and respect um, where certain behaviors or ways of living comes from is the first step for us to think about alternatives or better ways of changing or better ways of growing. So I do think acknowledging that there is survival strategy in that calls upon us to, in the workplace and as a community, to respond to that, to think about how do we help individuals feel safe, feel trust, feel a sense of belongingness, feel included, to be able to not constantly function under this stress and intensity of having to self-sacrifice. I don't know if this perfectly answer your question, but in that regard, I think that creates a work-life balance that sustains the mental health in the workplace for the group when we take care of um, our individuals, our colleagues, our peers in that regard. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love what you said about work life sustainability. Because as we are into the workforce, we don't just forget who we are when we come through the door, right? Like we still have other life responsibilities. We're still maybe a sister or a mom or, a friend. We have so many other things that goes into who we are as human beings. And you just can't ignore all of those other facets of our lives. They just don't really stop. They impact us as we show up to work each and every day. And we have to show up because this is the way that we earn our livings and are able to sustain our lives. And so, on that note, tell us a bit more either about like work life sustainability or how do you integrate work and life together to have synergy.
I think that understanding of work-life sustainability is really important. It's kind of like the saying, like one person can go fast, but with friends in a group that you can go far, right? I think that same concept apply to work-life sustainability as well. Focusing only on work, you might feel efficient in the short run. You might be able to accomplish a lot of tasks, for example, but we know that it's like running a marathon. It doesn't sustain, right? If you look at the long run and realize, well, this is whatever career you're choosing, right? That this really is a field that you want to stay, that it really is a career you're passionate about, then we really have to think about how do we balance between the immediate and the sustainability of it. It's also about building that muscle, right? And things like being able to, as mentioned earlier, like draw your own boundaries, not feel guilt tripped into taking on every single responsibility, and also realizing your own value, right? Like, what do I want to prioritize? What am I good at? And what are things that I feel okay about asking for help from others? And building your community. Who do I go to when I need kind of who do I go to when I need to talk? Who do I go to when I need support? Um, are things that build your muscle as you run this marathon, right? That allows you to sustain at the place that you want to be in the long run. And also, um, it's okay to um, it's okay to make mistakes. Um, it's okay to be imperfect. Um, it's okay to you know not be 100% on everything. And that I think allows us space to be able to get a deeper sense and clarity as to who we are. Um, and it's this I think this mentality also applies to the idea of rest as being part of work, or self-care as being important, or building community as being important. Sometimes there is this reverse affect where people feel like, oh, I'm failing on self-care, and that creates more stress and burden to individuals, right? So we're not doing this to be graded by others. We're not doing this to kind of fit into a perfect image. Sometimes we see this over glorified image on social media, for example, about someone who's able to be super efficient at work and then do all the self care routine. And then we thought, oh, we're so far away from it. But it's not a competition with others. It's your own personal journey, right? You really have to honestly reflect and think what works the best for yourself. And what works for you doesn't always work for others, and vice versa.
That's perfect, right? I think that is so true that we don't always have to think of things in a way to be in competition with one another, or always be in the space of doing something, which leads into the next question of, so speaking of social media, a lot of times we see hustle culture show up in our lives where folks feel like they need to be able to be doing so many different things. So having that multi-hyphenate name or personality or things that it is that they're doing, or always be on the go with something. Also, we have phones, and phones keep us connected every day through everything, with constant alerts and updates. And so, one of my personal habits for combating hustle culture is I don't have email on my phone. I learned a long time ago, as a new professional, I had email on my phone, and that was what I would do when I wake up, right? Like, I'm waking up and I'm checking who sent me emails. Why am I doing that? I learned that that's no longer a good habit for me. So now I really set a boundary of I work at the times that I'm supposed to work. So, what are some of the things that you do to combat hustle culture
Mhm.
in your everyday practice?
Yeah, I really appreciate your example. That is definitely something I myself need to learn to resist that urge and pressure of, I want to reply to the email that just pop up on my phone at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I think by setting that boundaries for yourself, you're also hopefully starting a ripple effect that helps others, right? If if you feel pressure to reply to an email at 3 o'clock, and then your colleague feel the pressure to then reply to you at 5 o'clock in the morning, then we're not creating a workforce or a community that actually supports this work-life balance. Um, and to answer your question, I think I come to realize that sometimes we feel the pressure to um, kind of um, kind of fit into this hustle culture or to this social media image um, out of a sense of insecurity or self judgment. I think there's all this pressure of we're only valuable or that our self worth is dependent upon how much we fit into this trend or how much we are able to be productive, right? And it is something that has kind of been perpetuated under the neoliberal or more capitalist society. And so I think to be able to recognize that, and again, as kind of we touched upon earlier, and come back to yourself to really believe in your self worth and self value, right? Like know what you're know who you are and know that your worth is not contingent on being able to have 5 titles behind your name, right? Not necessary. You don't necessarily have to have 5 part-time jobs plus a full-time job, right? That you can know what is meaningful about your career, what is meaningful about your life choice, and be confident in that. I think it's really helpful in terms of combating this, trying to get it all, do it all kind of scenario. And I would say the second thing is um, I think it also goes back to being honest with yourself, right? Sometimes it's great that I can have a full-time job and 3 other hobbies, and I can be doing my job and then taking an hour in between to do this and that, right? And to some people, that is self-care, that is a good work-life integration. Or to some people, working a job Monday, Tuesday, Friday, and then working another job the other 2 days is a work-life integration. But for other people, it's a it's it's not. For other people, it's just adding one pressure onto another pressure that makes your mind constantly worrying about 10,000 responsibilities, and that's not helpful. So, whether you're doing one thing out of um, a sense of pressure, duty, responsibility, proving your self worth, or you're doing something out of that is that really helps you take care of yourself, that really helps you relax or recharge. That's a question I think we can all really ask ourselves and try to be honest with ourselves, right? And so it's not as much as the outcome of I am actively doing 10 things, right? Or I'm actively having 10 titles. It's the process of um, what makes more sense to you, what feels comfortable, what feels manageable to you. And more so than, like you mentioned, the appearance on social media.
Absolutely. And so, like, what's one tangible thing that you think that folks could do to combat that, right? So, like I said, I don't have email. What's another thing that you think folks can do to really just like this one thing that's an easy, like, this quick behavior may help me feel a bit better?
Yeah, I think that looks different from person to person. But for me, I think even just practicing saying no, practicing drawing that boundaries And it can feel uncomfortable, but that is what I recognize I need to build that muscle.
Absolutely. That is perfect. Saying no. No is a sentence, right? That is a complete sentence. No. And you don't have to always provide additional information. So along these lines of being able to identify, like, this is a behavior that, like, I noticed I needed to change. What are some of the things that you've noticed within yourself or in general, when you start to realize, like, maybe I'm leaning in one way or another, right? Like, this is not integrating or sustainable. Like, there's too much life or there's too much work. What are some of the ways that you're able to see that for yourself?
I think there are a lot of signs for people to realize, or for myself to realize, that we're working too much and burning out, right? Feeling like like I mentioned earlier, feeling disconnected from your friends, from your community, prioritizing your work over everything else in your life. Or in my case, when I work with clients, when I work with patients, when I start to realize I don't have as much as patience toward them, or compassion fatigue, right? And really reflecting on, am I able to be attuned to the person in front of me in clinical settings? Um, or am I disassociating? Um, am I able to be present at the moment? Or is my mind going 10,000 different directions while I'm listening to my clients' stories? Those are signs that kind of remind me that, okay, I need to pause and rethink and give myself some space to organize. And I think that is, like we said earlier, that is a good self care, and that is also an important ethics, right? To For you to be able to be committed to the client in front of you, to maintain the standard of the work that you want to maintain. That is an ethic call to reflect. And I really like the Audre Lorde quote that we mentioned. It is also a political act. It is, by doing so, it is allowing a community or a collective to be able to actually care. It's also a resistance toward um, an overproductive kind of focused society that we live in. So sometimes I think by recognizing that, like we say, it's not self-indulgence, that allow us to pause and um, kind of really take a good look at all this science, and also have the motivation to make change to balance it a little bit, to adjust, and give yourself a little bit more time and space. Yeah, I did I answer your
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, that is perfect. I love exactly what it is that you're saying about recognizing, like, when you're not necessarily yourself. The way that I typically see it is, like, sometimes where I'm like, all right, I have too many concert tickets that's in my Ticketmaster waiting for me to go to, and maybe I'm not as focused as at work as I should be, right? So really understanding, like, all right, maybe this ticket is, if I can buy myself this ticket if I make sure that I hit this deadline. So being able to see those two, I love the both approaches, right? Like, this works for me and my motivation. And I love to hear you say, like, for you, it's about, like, am I actually being attentive to this client that's in front of me? Am I still showing up with compassion? Am I still being true to my ethics, right? Like, these are two experiences that are both very valuable to really understanding, like, what are the driving motivating factors for both of us. That is fantastic. And in this same line, sometimes when our life is a bit over the place, we have field schedules where every moment of our day is taken up. I love to tell young folks, or ask, where are you in your schedule, right? Like, is the time for you? If you are the person who, you have all these things that you have to do today and you are eating while you're doing a meeting, that means you were missing from your schedule.
Mhm.
So I would like to know, What are some of the ways that you remember to show up for you and have balance in your schedule and in your life when everything could be taking precedence?
Yeah, I really like this, the way how you ask this question to begin with, because that actually makes me think about, oh, sometimes if we look at our own schedule and our own lifestyle as if we are looking at a friend's schedule, or if we are looking at the client's schedule within, what would you say? And sometimes I realize that we have this compassion and capacity to create a balance for others, but not for ourselves. So sometimes I do think for me, I get really inspired by my clients in many, many, many ways all the time. But one thing that you're reminding me is that sometimes when I'm working with my clients, when they talk to me about how do they draw boundaries, how do they navigate, things like unreasonable ask, how do they advocate for themselves in workforce, it makes me reflect on myself. Am I doing this for myself as well?
Yeah.
And when I look at the schedule as if I am looking at my client's schedule and think, is this a reasonable schedule or ways of living and working that I would want my client to achieve? Um, that actually helps me to better reflect on myself and also just think about, if I'm not modeling this, how can I be there for my clients? How can I encourage them to find a better balanced life for them? And then that really, I think, encouraged me to do that for myself. And I also think, as we mentioned earlier, to think about, if I were able to do this, what does that mean for the community that I'm part of? Would that actually create space, take away some pressure, encourage other people to do the same for themselves? So I think I my hope is that we can all do this out of an internalized compassion, and support and respect toward ourselves. But also, I think sometimes thinking about your compassion toward others, thinking about how would you want your friends or loved ones live, kind of also help us to apply that same principle to ourselves.
That's fantastic. So I'm hearing you say, like, for you, it's important to make sure, like, it's okay if I give advice and guide other folks to have balance in their lives. Like, if I'm not reflecting those same values back to myself, sometimes it makes you feel like a hypocrite. Like, wait a minute, if I'm telling them not to do it, this doesn't work. If I'm going to give great advice, right? You think your advice and your guidance is great. That means you also have to follow and model it for yourself. And that is 1000% correct. So earlier in the conversation, I heard you talk about mentors and in the way in which they can be so helpful in helping us be able to find guidance. So can you tell us a little bit more about, like, what roles can mentors play in guiding young folks towards finding balance or integration in their life?
Yeah, definitely. I do. I think I appreciate having many, many supportive mentors. I have mentors who will tell me very simple things like we mentioned earlier. Please don't reply to my email at 12 o'clock midnight. And starting to model that for me, they starting to either putting the email, please don't reply to me right away, or trying themselves to not do it. I have mentors who, I think, having walked the path themselves, being able to understand my desire to prove myself and give me the reassurance that we see you, you're hardworking, but you don't have to go to the extreme. And also, I think um, I have mentors who understand that for a lot of young people just entering this field, that we feel insecure, that we feel um, confused, that we want to hold on to all the opportunities, that we feel the need to compete, but am able to respond to this inner thoughts and experiences, and kind of calm me down, reassure me. Those are the mentors that I really look up to and hope that I could be for others, for my colleagues and for others who I mentor in the future. And I think by being able to embody what they model for me and then pass it down in the long run, speaking of sustainability, then we are creating a workforce or an academia or whatever settings we're in that is supportive for others that come after us. And then I think having my mentor models a lot of having the humility to listen to my experience. And it both helps me um, model that for others, but also being more accepting and able to listen to myself when others do that for me. So I really think the roles of mentors and supervisors are really, really important in this kind of conversation. It's not just the work of young adult like us. It's not just the work of individual, but how do leadership roles, how do organization support its people, the people that they value in maintaining this work life balance.
Sophia, that is so excellent to be seen. I think all of us really want to be able to be seen in some type of way, right? Like, even if it is like you are just going in circles, just stop, right? Like somebody being able to stop, or somebody to say pause, or just being able to hear like those encouraging words. You're good enough. You are doing it. I see your hard work. You don't have to continue to do those things. That is such a great reflection. And also, I really, really, really appreciate you saying this, like having a mentor that has the humility to see you, right? Like that humility is very important, because sometimes when we are in these roles, we do forget to humanize folks. We do forget to provide grace. We do forget to show up with like empathy for others. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So before we leave, before that we end this conversation, are there any final thoughts or tips that you would like to share with young adults who are in this space about like how to have work-life integration?
Yeah, I think I'm just really glad that we're having this conversation. It's a work in progress for me. So I would like to think about this not as me giving advice, but me sharing my experience, and hopefully that will kind of empower other people to reflect on their own experience, and that we're all learning together. But I do want to um, say that to whoever is listening to this, that I see you, I hear you, metaphorically, that I know that you're working really hard. And it's okay to take a break. It's okay to be imperfect. And sometimes by allowing ourselves that space, we're actually making it more sustainable for us to reach where we want to go and continue on the passion that we're doing. And I also want to, I think, encourage more and appreciate, but also encourage more mentors like in workforce and organizations to join this conversation, join this force, thinking about how do we support this cultural shift, this movement toward work-life balance. And I will end with the quote that we begin with from Audre Lorde, that self-care is not indulgence. It really is self-preservation, and it's a political act toward making the society more just, the workforce more just, and the individuals more able to not feel pressure to overwork themselves, but be who they're meant to be in a more balanced and integrated way.
Thank you so much, Sophia, for taking the time to share with us about the ways in which you look towards work-life sustainability. I appreciate you and your long-time involvement with Active Minds. It has been great to share this with you today.
Yeah, thank you for all the awesome questions and spending time with me together as well.